Without further delay, let's listen to the vision from a lawmaker. He is none other than Dr. Pavan Duggal, expert in cyber law and e-commerce law, Supreme Court of India. I request Dr. Duggal to join the fireside chat with Dr. Deepak Kumar Sahu, Chief Editor, VAR India. Dr. Pavan Duggal is an advocate specializing in the field of cyber law and e-commerce law. He has been recognized as one of the best cyber lawyers around the world. He has made a tremendous impact with an international reputation as an expert and authority on cyber law, cybersecurity law and e-commerce law. He is the president of Cyber Law Asia, Asia's pioneering organization committed to the passing of dynamic cyber laws in the Asian continent. He is also a member of the WIPO Arbitration and Mediation Center panel of neutrals.
What is your viewpoints about the increasing high-tech crime in the country?
The country is beginning to see a phenomenon that the world is seeing. This is the phenomenon of the golden age of cybercrime. Ever since the coming of COVID-19, this golden age of cybercrime has begun, where high-tech crimes of all kinds and categories have been massively increasing with each passing day. Cyber criminals or perpetrators of high-tech crime are attacking at will. And because of COVID-19, there was an atmosphere of fear and panic. These cyber criminals started weaponizing fear and panic in such a manner so as to potentially target people. So globally, when one looked at high-tech crimes, one found that phishing became the #1 cybercrime across the world. And India was no exception. All kinds of indigenously created avatars of phishing came to be seen during the COVID-19, and they are continuing to keep on evolving with the passage of time. Now, with the dissemination of the vaccine, we have distinctive new categories of high-tech crimes which are specifically focused on the pretext of the vaccine, trying to gauge and win the confidence of the potential victim and thereafter robbing him or her of not just his or her data, but also of monies per se. Further, we've also begun to see massive increase in ransomware as a very specialized high-tech crime. Globally, ransomware has become a big menace and a challenge. In fact, every 11 seconds, one company anywhere in the world becomes a victim of this high-tech crime. In India, the position is just the same, except it's not being reported. So in India, people tend to get a feeling of complacency to say everything is hunky-dory, all cybercrimes are under control, and we don't really need to worry. But the COVID-19 has actually now seen so much frequency and variety of cybercrimes that we have not seen such frequency and variety over the last 50 years of the inception of internet per se. So I believe these are part of an evolving new landscape as far as cyberspace is concerned. I've written a recent book called New Cyber World Order Post-COVID-19, where I've actually analyzed distinctive new changes in cyberspace. These high-tech crimes are going to be our lifelong companion. In the sense, they will be a default normal. It's not a question of whether you will become a victim of high-tech crime or not. It's a question of when will you become a victim of high-tech crime if you have not already so become. So in a scenario like this, the focus becomes even more relevant that the legal frameworks have to be updated so as to meet up with the distinctive new challenges that these high-tech crimes are beginning to throw up. The coming of the work from home paradigm during COVID-19 has given yet another fillip to the further growth of high-tech crime, which is specifically targeted at work from home devices. We have been seeing so many cases where the cybersecurity of devices work from home have been compromised, breached. As per one survey, there has been an increase of 242% as far as cyber attacks on devices of people working from home. And with not much focus on increasing cybersecurity, most of the employees working from home invariably are becoming victims of these high-tech crimes. On top of it, Now these high-tech crimes have begun to start taking new manifestations in the form of instant loan giving apps, and via that instant loan giving app phenomenon, trying to target people by robbing them of their monies, by straddling them with very high interest rates, and also with a lot of hidden charges. So much so that now high-tech crime has begun to start having an impact upon the lives of people. People have started committing suicide as a result of becoming victim of these kinds of newly emerging high-tech crimes. I think the writing is very clear on the wall. This new cyber world order, which we will enter into once we are completely victorious against COVID-19, will be characterized by massive increase in high-tech crimes and cyber crimes. Therefore, the mindset has to be focused more on cyber resilience. It's not a question of shame that you become a victim of a high-tech crime. The important, bigger consideration is how quickly can you come back to a state of normalcy after being hit by this high-tech crime. And I think the onus is increasingly going to be on governments so as to make their specific cyber legal frameworks to deal with these high-tech crimes far more effective and far more robust. Unfortunately, at the time when I talk in India, our conviction rates on high-tech crimes is very poor. We have less than 1% conviction rate in terms of success ratio. On top of it, we don't in India have a dedicated legal framework on cyber crimes. Some cyber crimes have been incorporated under the Indian cyber law, being the Information Technology Act 2000, while some other cyber crimes have been sought to be covered under the Indian Penal Code, which also got amended by the Information Technology Act. But the 2008 amendments to the Information Technology Act 2000, which expanded the coverage of cyber crimes under the Indian cyber law, made one historical mistake. India made almost all cyber crimes as bailable offenses, as a result of which the deterrence which was attached to cyber criminal activities suddenly went out of the window. People began to start realizing that it's so easy for them to destroy electronic evidence which is incriminating, and then also sit back and relax because they are not going to be convicted in the absence of incriminating electronic evidence. No wonder India has begun to see a massive famine as far as high-tech crime convictions are concerned. I think those trends need to be appropriately addressed. Not just the Indian law needs to be updated so as to bring within its ambit the newly emerging kinds of high-tech crimes, but also we must provide cogent mechanisms for getting effective convictions of these high-tech crimes. It's the message of deterrence that needs to go through, and for that, all onus will be on the government on how it quickly comes up with effective mechanisms to regulate these high-tech crimes and cyber crimes in the Indian context.
Yeah, wonderful, sir. So the cyber criminals' motivation is basically to earn money. On this backdrop, how Indian BFSI sector and banking sector is safe or it is unsafe?
The Indian BFSI sector is neither safe nor very good zone to be in. The reason for this is that this is now a fertile potential attack target that's going to be targeted by state and non-state actors. If you look at the last few months, first we found the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team warning of a big cyber attack which could take place in India and that could be based on phishing. Then we also saw yet another warning by the Indian banking regulator to the banks, asking them to get prepared for a big cyber attack which is going to be targeted at the banking network. Actually, we are not alone in this kind of a preparation level. Globally, we have begun to start seeing so much of attacks on the BFSI sectors in different countries. Only last week, we found that the central bank of New Zealand found that it got itself to be a victim of a massive cyber attack. Further, we found a few months back that Australia had seen some massive increase in cyber attacks, which were all targeted at Australian critical information infrastructure, including Australian banks. And Australia said that it was effectively an infringement of its cyber sovereignty and said that some state actor was behind the same without naming the actor. So I think this is now the existing new ground reality. If you are in India, please realize for any state or non-state actor outside India to target India, the first logical point of contact in terms of attack will be the BFSI sector. Because if they can actually pull down the BFSI sector, they can actually not just instill fear and panic in the hearts of the depositors and investors in the Indian economy, but more significantly, can also start having a prejudicial impact upon the sovereignty, security, and integrity of India. That's the reason why in the BFSI sector, we have to constantly keep on updating our cybersecurity skill sets as also mindsets. As part of the G. Gopalakrishna working group of the Reserve Bank of India, and as a member thereof, I, along with other members, had contributed in developing the architecture for cybersecurity to be followed by banks, which now the banks have been following all these years. But still, I find that there are big gaps. I find that most of the banks have still not completely complied with all provisions in terms of their compliances under the Information Technology Act 2000, as also rules and regulations made thereunder. Further, the RBI notification of 6th of July 2017, where it mandated banks to return back or refund monies which were lost in unauthorized transactions by the users, I feel is a norm that's been more observed in breach rather than in observance. Banks find innovative ways to deprive and deny legitimate users who have lost their monies in unauthorized transactions from getting potential refunds. I think the landscape needs to change. And now, with increasing attacks on the BFSI sector, which are originating from the darknet, it becomes even more important that we must, as a nation, start concentrating on protecting and preserving the cybersecurity of the BFSI ecosystem in India. Now, for that, we find ourselves in a challenging position. Why? Because number one, India does not have a dedicated law on cybersecurity. The Indian cyber law, being the Information Technology Act 2000, is not a law on cybersecurity and hardly provides only lip service to cybersecurity. Even the National Cybersecurity Policy of 2013, despite being a good document, has remained a mere paper tiger because it didn't get implemented. The Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his 15th August address from the ramparts of the Red Fort, had announced that India will soon be coming up with a national cybersecurity strategy. That strategy, I hope, is going to be comprehensive and will inform the decision making in various aspects of activities as far as the cyber ecosystem is concerned. But I believe that the time has come where India just does not only want a cyber strategy, but wants a dedicated cybersecurity law. If you really want to protect not just the cyber ecosystem in general, but also the BFSI ecosystem in particular, we have to be mindful of the fact that different countries in different parts of the world have already begun to start taking note of the fact that internationally there's a policy vacuum. There's no one international cybersecurity treaty or law in place. So different countries have begun to start coming up with dedicated laws on cybersecurity at the national level. China is leading that group of nations, having come up with more than 3 national legislations impacting cybersecurity. So much so that even Singapore, Thailand, Egypt, and now Australia and Vietnam have also come up with dedicated national laws on cybersecurity. In this context, while getting a dedicated law on cybersecurity for India becomes a crying need of our times, but till such time that does not happen, the onus will be on the regulators. The Reserve Bank of India has been leading by example in terms of its vision and thought leadership. It's actually gone ahead and stay put on this entire idea of data localization. And thanks to the RBI efforts, today all banking data of Indians is physically located within the territorial boundaries of India. But beyond that, I think it's time where regulators now will have to start mandating their distinctive stakeholders in the BFSI space, not only to have regular cybersecurity audits, but also to have regular cyber law audits, just to make sure that if there are any gaps in terms of compliances with the Indian cyber law by these entities, they should have the same rectified at the earliest, so that compliance of law becomes of crucial necessity. Further, I believe the BFSI sector needs to quickly realize that almost all constituents in this ecosystem become intermediaries under the Indian cyber law. Further, under Section 79 of the Indian Information Technology Act 2000, I find that these BFSI stakeholders will have to exercise due diligence while discharging their obligations under the law. Some parameters of due diligence have been stipulated under the Information Technology Rules 2011, but I believe the time has come that the government now must come up with fresh, new guidelines, rules, and regulations for protection and preservation of cybersecurity in the BFSI sector.
Wonderful, sir. Can you throw some light on the cyber policing and the role of police for the controlling the cybercrime?
Cyber policing has to be an essential element in the ammunition bag of any nation. Why? Because cybercrime is here to stay. And now with the golden age of cybercrime already having come in, if you are not going to have effective cyber policing, you are effectively going to cede your interests in the cyberspace region as a whole. Therefore, having in place effective, efficient, and well-trained and well-equipped cyber policing elements in your overall law enforcement agency hold-up, I believe, becomes of crucial necessity. But then what exactly is cyber policing? It's policing cyberspace. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the same because they think cyber policing has got something to do with censorship. I think people need to be clear that cyber policing is all about trying to get law and order back into cyberspace and to make cyberspace a safer, better, more secure, and more reliable cyberspace to live in and to interact. And for that, it's imperative that the cyber police agencies need to be well equipped with the latest tools, not just in terms of detection, but also in terms of investigation as also prosecution of various kinds of cyber criminal activities. The problem is that internet has made geography history. And now it's possible for any one person located in one part of the world to go ahead and engage in cyber criminal activities which are targeting computer systems or computer resources located in another part of the world. Hence, trying to identify who these real cyber actors are becomes a big challenge. And for the cyber policing angle, it becomes very important so as to find out how can you attribute a particular cyber criminal activity to a particular cyber actor. Complicating the entire scenario is the fact that the incriminating relevant electronic evidence is often located on servers which are outside the territorial boundaries of your country. And much that we would like some kind of an international framework, there is no one international framework on cybercrime in terms of cooperation. Yes, there is the Budapest Convention of the Council of Europe or the Convention on Cybercrime of Council of Europe, which represents the only successful example of a working treaty at the international level with more than 60 nations having already become members of the Budapest Convention. However, it's quickly important to note that India has chosen not to become a member of the Budapest Convention because India believes that adopting such a convention could have a prejudicial impact upon the enjoyment of the sovereignty of the Indian nation. Further, it needs to be quickly realized that the Budapest Convention is almost now 2 decades old. Meanwhile, cybercrime as a paradigm has evolved in a very, very fantastic manner. So consequently, the time has now come where the mechanisms of the Budapest Convention would require to be supplemented by new, better, and more futuristic mindsets as also processes so as to help law enforcement agencies in detecting, investigating, and prosecuting cyber crimes. I think there's a need for massive capacity building. As someone who has been teaching at the National Police Academy in Hyderabad and the National Judicial Academy in Bhopal, I can tell you that we have got some wonderful officers in the police and also in the judiciary. But I think when I look at the nation as a whole, I find the numbers are so huge that there's a need for constant capacity building. And I think that becomes of crucial necessity. The good news is that the government is committed in this direction. They have recently launched a particular online diploma for the law enforcement agencies in terms of helping them in assisting in the detection and investigation of high-tech crimes. Meanwhile, Interpol has also launched a new program to teach law enforcement agencies on how to detect and investigate crimes on the dark net. So there's work happening, but I think far more work is required to be done. Ultimately, if you're going to have strong cyber policing entities within your country, you are effectively going to put in a message of deterrence. More significantly, having such kind of agencies is going to help increase the confidence and the trust of the people in the intrinsic ability of the system to give them instantaneous relief or justice. And I think India now must work extensively on improving its high-tech or cybercrime conviction ratio. With the conviction ratio of less than 1%, I believe that there's a lot of work for India to do. Further, I believe that the existing legal frameworks on electronic evidence will have to be appropriately revisited, though the Supreme Court in the latest judgment of Arjun Pandit Rao Kotkar has upheld the principles of Section 65B of the Indian Evidence Act. We are beginning to see that with the advent of the mobile technologies and with cloud computing, with blockchain, Internet of Things, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence coming in, these principles of electronic evidence would require a fresh handling, a fresh approach. So a holistic approach is required in terms of cyber policing, not just in terms of picking up the right people, amending the Indian IT law so as to make sure that cybercrime investigation gets relegated to the sub-inspectors so that more and more sub-inspectors can investigate these cybercrimes, to ensuring that the bailability element in cybercrime has to be going away and making deterrence a part of the message in terms of the proposed amendments to the Information Technology Act. And finally, in creating far more capacity building. In having a strong cyber policing force within the country, will a country achieve tremendously way forward growth and progress in the direction of trying to regulate cybercrime. It's a constant battle, so we will have to constantly keep on updating the skill sets of cyber policing agencies, officials, and individuals so as to keep them abreast with the latest technological developments and the latest tools for detection, investigation, and prosecution of cybercrimes. If we are able to consistently work in this direction over a long period of time, such a strategy is going to really reap some rich dividends for the nation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Wonderful input.
Thank you, Dr. Duggal, for sharing the reality bites related to the cyber law and its consequences.